Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
We're live at the Miami Book Fair, powered by Life Improvement Radio on Author's Corner and the Total Education Network. Again, you can go to my website, totaltutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, Neil Haley, LinkedIn. And I'm with Eric Remmel from Life Improvement Radio. And Eric, we're having an interesting day for sure for day 2 of Miami Book Fair, aren't we?
We really are, and it keeps getting better and better. We've got a ton of great authors today to talk to.
This is one that, it's just an absolute honor, especially the news and specifically now to learn more about his book and everything, because you see the mainstream media and you see all these different people talk about this man, and it's interesting to just learn so much about it. So I want to welcome to the program Bill Ayers. Bill, thanks for coming by, author of your memoir, Public Enemy, Confessions of an American Dissident. Bill, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to talk with you because I've heard so much about specifically how, you're a very entertaining guy, have a great conversation, and it was interesting to hear off air how much you enjoy the Miami Book Fair and book fairs in general because of people sharing their art, right?
Well, there's two things, really. I love book fairs, and I love the combination that gets generated and the kind of propulsive energy that gets generated. I think it's great. The other thing I love, and I've been on book tour since October 8th, and I love going to independent bookstores because this is where the public gathers and creates a public space. And walking into the Miami Book Fair this morning, I felt the same way. Here's a space where we can talk about ideas, where we can exchange views, and really get close to understanding some things about each other.
Exactly. And, Eric, that's the nice thing about the Miami Book Fair. Everyone has a platform to describe what their passion is, and especially with Bill and his memoir. Eric?
Exactly. And you can put a bunch of intellectuals in a similar room, and it's great because typically authors are just talking to themselves and writing to themselves. So
it's very important to have this kind of public interchange. And really, if you look at the range of things that are on display here and on offer here, you really get a deep, deep sense of the human condition and where we are and where we might like to go. So I'm just thrilled to be a part of it.
Okay, so let's talk about the memoir. Again, we know, I guess, what sometimes the mainstream media puts out in specific ways. Is that one reason why you wanted to write the memoir?
Well, my publisher, I wrote a memoir called Fugitive Days, which was the story of the 10 years of the American War in Vietnam. And it was the story of a young, privileged, innocent kid waking up in 1965 to a world on fire. And that kid was me, and I was at the University of Michigan. And it tracks kind of those 10 years where I was a leader of the student movement and then one of the founding members of the Weather Underground. The war ended in 1975, and the memoir ends there too. But my publisher, Beacon Press, from the beginning was saying, look, we should do another memoir, another one. And I was not the least bit interested until the 2008 campaign, when I was thrown kind of unwittingly and unwillingly into this presidential moment as the kind of shady character, along with Jeremiah Wright, who Barack Obama was palling around with. And at that point I began, I think, kind of doodling and writing pretty much as therapy. And as I crafted the thing, I realized, I really should go back and talk about the years from 1975 on and how one tries to live a life, consistent with commitments and passions that were ignited as a young man as times change and over a long life. And that's what this book is.
Very interesting. In a lot of ways, Bill, you had to kind of share that stuff and kind of, in a way, clear the air because of, I guess, becoming a celebrity after that election in a lot of ways.
I wouldn't say celebrity. I'd say notoriety.
Notoriety. Okay.
But the other thing is, Neil, I never felt, and I don't feel, and the tone of the book is not an attempt to get even or to settle scores. I feel like if I tried to answer everything that was ever said about me, I'd be like a character in Kafka, trying to correct the record for 100 years. It's not that kind of book at all. It really is much more than I would have anticipated, a story about teaching and parenting with occasional bursts of more dramatic things, because in a world as out of balance in this, I find myself again and again drawn into activism for peace, activism against mass incarceration, and so on. But all along, it's a book about my kids, it's a book about my grandkids, and it's a book about being a teacher.
We're talking to Bill Ayers, author and very well-known public figure. I won't use the word celebrity, Bill, but it's an honor to have you on the show, and with Eric Remmel from Life Improvement Radio. And Eric, I think that ultimately I've studied Bill and understand and hear certain things that have come up. I'm really interested in learning, and I know you have some questions as well about specifically after the Weather Underground, how his life's changed. We talk about all these NFL athletes I have on my show and all these different celebrities that, you know, when their public life changes and they go into, I guess, the private life, how they change careers and stuff in so many ways. Isn't that true, Eric? Yeah, I was asking Eric just to kind of.
Yeah, I wondered. You want to weigh in, Eric?
Sorry, I was having. I'm sorry, I'm working out technical difficulties, guys. I'm multitasking, but
let me just jump right back into Bill. Let me just kind of say that, Bill. Now, the book is about that time. So basically, after now a life change, you're ready to move on in your life with your wife. Kind of put us in that position after the Weather Underground and where you went.
Well, you know, we came above ground in 1981. We had 2 small children, and we were resuming normal life. But for us, normal life includes political activism and political engagement. I was a school teacher, and I was a school teacher for many, many years, and then a professor of education. But what I try to kind of do in this memoir is demonstrate and tell the story of somebody trying to stay true to the passions of his youth and stay true to his commitments, even as the situations change and grow and develop. The one thing I've learned, you know, you reference these athletes and people who have a certain amount of celebrity and then find themselves in normal life. I've been a public person for really my whole adult life in the sense that I've been a political person, a political activist, someone who has spoken out on the issues of the day. But I've never taken very seriously either the mainstream media critiques of me or other people who might celebrate me. I find it becomes a kind of a fool's errand to take seriously either set of reviews. What I think is important for people to do is to open their eyes, make some judgments about their own values and commitments, and then act on those commitments. And when you act on your commitments, 2 things happen. One is you get thrust more into a public space than you might have anticipated. But the other thing is it's a great antidote to cynicism, passivity, and depression. I have a wonderful T-shirt I'm wearing that says "depressed?" and on the back it says maybe it's political. So I think the great antidote to feeling that we're living in a train wreck, to get up and say something and do something, and that's what I've tried to do my whole life.
Very, very interesting. And so basically, you said life never changed. It just kept moving on. You had your specific goals in mind, political and education-wise, and you just went on.
Personal, absolutely. And I would say, I mean, things swirl around you, but one of the things that was astonishing about the 2008 campaign is that while I was being thrust up into the public discussion again and again, as was my friend Jeremiah Wright, as was my friend Rashid Khalidi, as we were being kind of pounded around, my life was quite normal the way my life is day to day. That is, I got up every morning. I was working at that time on a graphic novel. I worked with my co-author and artist, and we would work 6 hours a day and then order out for pizza. I mean, it was a day like any other day. And I made a point of not watching the images of myself on TV because it probably would have driven me crazy. My kids watched for me. I have 3 boys in their 30s, and they kind of monitored the news for me, and they found it mildly amusing when a character named Bill Ayers would appear on Saturday Night Live or Stephen Colbert. But pretty much we took it with a shrug and a laugh.
That's the funny thing about it, because you got to ignore what's going on in the media at times because of how sensationalized it is in so many ways.
That's true when it comes to people, and it was certainly true in my case. But it's also true that you can't kind of take the media framing of an issue that seriously either. I mean, I work in school reform and the defense of public education. And again, I hear politicians get to a microphone and say, we need to get the lazy, incompetent teachers out of the classroom. Whenever they say that, I feel myself nodding dully. What am I going to say? Leave the lazy teacher there for my granddaughter? Of course not. But if I get to the microphone first and say, every kid in an American public school deserves an intellectually grounded, morally committed, caring, compassionate, curious, well-rested, well-paid teacher in the classroom, I win the argument. So it's not so much that we have to worry about the celebrity or the misdirection. We have to worry about how we understand our world beyond somebody else framing it for us.
Exactly. And as my big platform, one of my shows, Bill, goes into education, and I attack some of the reform that's going on and how they're forgetting about kids and developing young minds. We're teaching to a test, and we're literally forgetting about ultimately how kids develop and in so many ways. And I see, so your passion definitely comes into education. So in the book, it talks about you being a professor as well, correct? And
I think you're absolutely right that in the whole madness around the so-called school reform, this corporate reform agenda, learning gets lost, teaching gets lost, and the kids get lost. But there's something even deeper than that, which is we have to ask ourselves, in a democracy, what is the point of education? Even a flawed democracy or a partial democracy or an aspirational democracy. And my argument again and again is that in a democracy, we have to base our education system on a fragile but precious principle, and that is that every human being is of incalculable value. That means that the fullest development of the entire community is the condition for the full development of anyone. And we have to push towards a robust public education system, not the dismantling of it in favor of kind of selling off the public space to private managers.
I totally agree, Bill. I'd love to have you on my show, especially an education show, to push this view, because, again, we're seeing it ultimately with the Obama administration and Secretary Arne Duncan, that I think it's more of an appeasement to the corporations, and it makes me sad, because as a teacher, when we teach to the test, and as my wife is doing it now, it's sad. It's a completely
it's really a terrible move that we're going in. And if you look at the Duncan agenda, it's the same as the agenda under the Bush administration, which is reduce education to a single measure, a test score, destroy the collective voice of teachers, whether that's a union or an association, and then sell the public space off to private managers. It's a catastrophe for our future as a democratic society, and it's something we have to resist. I have two granddaughters in the Chicago public school system, and so I'm involved in this day in and day out. But what I want to fight for is the idea that whatever the most privileged people have for their kids, that's what we should have for all kids. So folks like Duncan, who are pushing this agenda, they have their kids in schools where they have robust arts programs, good literature, real learning, a curriculum based in part on pursuing the kids' interests. If that's good enough for Duncan's kids, it should be good enough for all kids.
I'm talking to Professor Bill Ayers, and it's absolutely an honor to hear your point of view on this, Bill. And Eric, I'm letting you chime in. This is my craft right here. I'm an educator, and I'm talking to somebody that truly believes in passion of education, and I believe in. Is there a question you have for Bill, Eric?
No, I think you guys pretty much touched on all the things I wanted. Sorry I had to step out for a second and get technical difficulties tweaked, but I'm anxious to read the book and learn more, and education is a passion of mine as well. And one of the reasons why we started this station was to help teach and educate and to pass on the knowledge. So I'm super excited to read the book, and it was an honor to talk to you today.
I appreciate it so much.
And Bill, I know you have a couple more minutes. I'm still ready. I just wanted to see if Eric had questions. I have 1,000 more to talk about. So in the book, you're definitely highlighting your education push, that you really are out there trying to make sure that every student receives a great education, especially in public schools, right?
That's correct. And as I said, I think that we have to understand that in every authoritarian society on earth or through history, whatever else they teach, literature, music, history, they also teach obedience and conformity. In a free society, whatever else we teach, we have to teach initiative, courage, entrepreneurship, imagination, curiosity, and too much in this kind of push for this corporate reform, we're getting away from those underlying principles and values, and much more teaching kids to know their place in the hierarchy of winners and losers and just stay there. That's not a free society. That's not what we need or want.
Fantastic. One other question, Bill. In your memoir, does it talk about especially family life, the family life with your wife and children, and again raising them in the process of being a professor and your lives in general?
Well, our three kids are now all in their 30s. One's a lawyer, one's a middle school teacher, one's a professor of theater and a playwright. But, they grew up in a very political home, a home that was concerned about the issues of the day. We didn't have a television. The currency in the room was always conversation. We always had big dinners and meetings and this and that and this and that. And sometimes it was amusing. But, every one of us is thrust into the world. We don't choose our parents. We don't choose our religion. What kids want is they want to know that they're recognized and loved. And our kids certainly knew that. But sometimes there were amusing things. They went on demonstrations with us and so on. But I'll tell you one quick story if I have time.
You have time.
When my oldest son was 2 years old, I took him to Aqua Tots, which is a swimming class at the YMCA, and we were emerging out of the Y near Times Square in Manhattan, just as a raucous demonstration was roaring by of feminists marching to Times Square chanting, "No more porn, no more porn," and being genetically programmed to demonstrate whenever I see a demonstration. I leapt into the demonstration with my son on my shoulders, and we marched 3 or 4 blocks toward Times Square chanting, "No more porn." And he got hungry after a bit, and we slipped off and went into a pizzeria. And as we got into the booth, Zaid looked up at me and said, "That was great. Why don't we want any more corn?" And I thought, exactly, he missed something about the concept, but he also got something about the concept, and that is we stand up for what we believe in, and we do it publicly, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a healthy way to live.
Well, it's definitely a healthy way to live, Bill, and I think that in a lot of ways now people finally get to see the true person.
I don't know. I'm not sure there is a true person. I think there's multiple. I think I'm a work in progress, struggling through a swirling history just like everybody else, and all I can do is, act on what I understand and rethink and act again, and I intend to keep going until I drop off the face of the earth, so that'll be a while, I hope.
Can I define you as a passionate person, Bill?
Well, I think I'm a passionate person, but, all my life as an educator, I've resisted labels. So I would say that, sometimes when people ask me if I'm a radical or if I'm a this or that, I think I am a radical, but I think on the First Amendment, I probably, like you, I'm a fundamentalist. I think on prisons, I'm an abolitionist. On war, I'm a pacifist. And on government, I'm a bit of an anarchist. So it's hard to sum me up, but passion certainly is what I hope I bring to my life, and all of us should bring to our lives.
And well, one thing as a journalist, Bill, and when I tell my friends who are a little different politically than I am, they'll laugh and say, "You interviewed Bill Ayers?" And I said, "Yeah." And ultimately, the thing that I've learned as a journalist in 4 years is ultimately we all agree on certain things. Education, I completely agree with you, Bill, but other things, I know we don't. But that's what's so great about public forum in America. If we allow people to share ideas.
That's why we should be in dialogue at all times. We should be listening with the possibility of being changed, but we should be speaking with the possibility of being heard. And the great crime of the 2008 campaign with throwing me and Jeremiah Wright and Rashid Khalidi into that mix, it wasn't just the demonization of these three people. It was really the idea that if you talk to somebody, then there's guilt by association. The fact that Barack Obama speaks to a wide range of people and has a mind of his own is not a sin. That's a virtue. And we shouldn't say only talk to people you agree with. We should say talk to strangers, talk to people you disagree with all the time, and do it in a meaningful way.
I completely agree with you, and that's one thing in my education show. A lot of times I don't agree with certain what teacher unions say, and I bring them on my show, and I still have a dialogue with them. I don't attack them and make them feel bad. I want to, and I've changed a lot of my tune in education. A former teacher for 9 years and kind of anti-union in certain aspects, and saying, "Whoa, now I'm finally getting the true picture by talking to these people."
Well, the interesting thing about that, too, is that it's partly a question of, again, of framing the issue. I've never felt, people think I'm a very far-out left-wing radical. I must be barricaded in a very strange bunker. But the fact is, I've never in my life felt that I'm in the minority. I think if I frame the issue properly, I'm in the overwhelming majority, whether it's peace, whether it's the rights of individuals to be gay and lesbian, whether it's, name the issue. I think I'm in the majority if I frame the issue properly. Often I don't, and then I find myself kind of on the defensive. But I think that dialogue, talking, a radio show like this is the right way to encourage democracy and to enhance democracy.
Well, I definitely would love to talk to you again. I know how busy your schedule is, but one other question I wanted to kind of bring up is what's the response to the book, especially to everyone? I mean, because there are people that don't like you, Bill. That's for sure.
Well, yeah. You know, it's funny. I don't take a poll like that. I just go on. But I'll tell you, so far, I've been on a book tour, as I say, for a couple of months, and it has been unbelievably exciting. And often I think people don't come out necessarily to these independent bookstores, for example, to see me or to support my book. But what I say at the beginning of every talk is I say, we need this independent bookstore, so you don't have to buy my book, but buy a book. And the reason is these are precious institutions. As the public is being eclipsed, we need a space like this. So I had a couple hundred people in Manhattan. I had 300 people in Berkeley. I had a couple hundred people last night in Washington, D.C. And one of the reasons I think people come out is there's a hunger for dialogue. There's a hunger for a public space to have the discussion. And I think the work you do, Neil, and I think probably the work Eric does, this is one way that we expand the public space. We have real conversations with real people, and we let ourselves think and advocate and change.
Well, I'm going to somehow try to reach out to you again to have you on to talk education. I definitely would love to have you back on. Bill, where can we find information on you, purchase your book, and learn more about you?
Well, I'm sure you can Google it. I mean, that's what my kids would say when I ask them any question at all. They say you can Google that. But my website is billayers.org. The book is published by Beacon Press. You can contact them or any of the independent booksellers. They have it all. All of them have it listed online. So I appreciate your allowing me to come on and speak.
Well, I would love to talk to you about just the Weather Underground and the times before as well. But education, you and I completely agree. And if you would research me, Bill, you'd laugh and say, "Oh my gosh, this guy really does is a journalist that is fair and balanced, unlike lots of people." So I appreciate you coming by.
Well, I'm glad to do it. Really glad to do it.
And it was a lot of fun talking to you. So take care. Enjoy yourself at the book fair. And best of luck on the book. I definitely want to read it. So take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. All right, you're listening to Author's Corner, powered by Life Improvement Radio. That was just Bill Ayers. We had no idea he was coming on the show. You're listening live. We're going to have to take a break because, again, that was just an unbelievable interview.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.